Fox. I'm the director of a company called Study in UK. Today I'm going to be talking about applying to a UK university, and this is from the point of view of guidance counsellors. Okay, so I'm going to begin anyway. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But as I said, my name is Vicki. I'm from the UK originally. I've been working for this organization for about 18 years. It's actually a global organization, but I set up this office in Toronto about 7 years ago now. So we're really focused on helping Canadian students find opportunities in the UK for higher education. We just opened an office in Vancouver, so I'm glad to see some Vancouver schools here today. We are based downtown in Vancouver on, I want to say, West Georgia Street, is that correct? And we're also in Toronto in King Street West, downtown too. So yeah, all of our consultants are actually based in the UK, so based in Toronto. So we have a team of about 15 consultants that help students, guidance counsellors, parents through the application process of applying to a British university. We're actually the official representative of UK universities in Canada. So whenever a UK university comes to Canada, they come to our office, they train our consultants, and they talk to us about, you know, the various differences between their programs. And our job really here is to help them grow their presence in Canada and to make Canadian students aware of their programs. So if you go to any UK university's website, you go to their Canada pages, you will see us as the official representative from Canada. We work with over 100 UK universities in the UK. So that's pretty much all of them except for Oxford and Cambridge, who don't need any help. So yes, as I said, our team are British Council certified, so they've all been through the British Council training. We help students choose a university. We help them select programs if they need to. We're an official UCAS centre in Canada. I'm assuming most of you know what that is, but it's the application portal that undergraduate students need to apply to a UK university. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we also organise the UK University Fair, which is the largest UK university fair that takes place in Canada, actually including the US really, because there's no other fair that is just dedicated to UK universities. So we have around 50 UK universities that come to our event in September, at the end of September, so right at the beginning of the school year. And we also are hosting our first event in Vancouver this year on September 27th too. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So how do we help you? How do we help students? I think I should have probably put this a bit earlier, but our service is absolutely free because we are funded by the UK universities. So essentially we're a helpline for students, for guidance counsellors that if they want to apply to the UK, you're welcome to talk to any of our consultants. How we help students is we will look at their transcripts. We'll look at the course they're interested in. We will know if they have the grades to be able to enter certain universities, and we'll be able to guide them through the actual process of applying to universities. So they will need what's called a personal statement, which is a one-page essay that explains why they want to study in the UK. And we will help give them some pointers about how to structure that statement, what to include. And, you know, for certain subjects like medicine, veterinary science, there are some very clear examples that the university staff are looking for when they're reading these applications. We will help with the actual UCAS process. UCAS can be a little bit confusing. I think we help quite a few guidance counsellors across Canada with that process if they have problems on UCAS. UCAS is equally easy to contact themselves, but you have to call the UK. As we are an official UCAS centre, you can reach out to us directly with any questions you have about UCAS. We also help with interview preparation and give advice on funding, scholarships, securing and accepting offers. Okay, so this is what we've put a little diagram of UCAS on the right here. So a student, if they are applying to an undergraduate program in the UK, they can apply to 5 institutions. Usually, most universities will only accept applications via UCAS. There are quite a few UK institutions that actually have direct application forms, so you could apply to extra universities outside of UCAS, but usually 5 options is enough to apply to the UK. So in terms of preparing your students, we are currently preparing students now for 2024 entry. This is, in terms of, there are a few deadlines that to be aware of, and I think because of the way medicine and some of the top universities operate, you need to apply by October the 15th of this year for entry in the following year. So we're now preparing some of our kind of, you know, higher caliber students, I guess you could say, that have higher grades for that process of applying to Oxford for medicine, for veterinary medicine, and for other top ranked universities like Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, LSE, and I'm trying to think of others, Imperial. So they will be the universities that require an application by October 15th. So in September, you can start creating I think you can begin creating the UCAS profile now, actually, but you can't send it until September. So now is the time to start filling in the UCAS form, start collecting their documents, so that they're really ready for that first deadline in the middle of October. The second deadline is January 30th. That is for the majority of UK schools. We recommend that students, if they want to go to the UK in 2024, they apply by the end of January. This is because it's very unpredictable that places can fill up. And yes, I think it's just, we always encourage an early application. Sometimes we get an email from a university, this course is closed. So we always recommend students to apply before the January 30th deadline. That also takes into consideration, it takes a few months, sometimes longer, for students to get their offers. And by June, when they receive their final transcript from their grade 12, then they have met the conditions of their offer, which means they will be issued an unconditional offer and they can then apply for the visa after they've paid the deposit. So this is what the typical timeline looks like. And then in September, university begins, usually mid to end of September, some at the beginning. So that is the timeline. And, you know, as I said, now is the time to start preparing students for medicine, Oxford and Cambridge, and any other top ranked university. So the UCAS is the online application portal, as I said before. We are an official UCAS center, which means we have our own buzzword. A buzzword is just a code that you enter into UCAS. I'm not sure if some of you already have that set up with UCAS, but it's a code that links a student to your school or to your organization. So we work with schools that have their own buzzword, and a lot of schools work with us and use our buzzword. By having a buzzword, it means you can manage all the students in your portal. We help about 1,000 students every year apply from Canada to the UK, so we're very familiar with this portal. We know how to use it and how to get the most out of it in terms of making sure students meet the deadlines of any offers they need to accept by any dates. So these are just some instructions. We'll be sending this presentation to you afterwards, but these are some instructions on how to add that buzzword to your student's application when they're setting up their own application. So what documents do they need to apply? Obviously, they'll need their high school transcripts. They just need a scanned copy. A lot of schools are very confused about where do you upload the transcripts, but in UCAS you don't actually need to upload the transcripts. You're copying the grades from each module into UCAS, and then they will request a scanned copy of your transcript of the grade 11 transcripts, usually after the student has applied. They'll also need to prepare a personal statement. As I mentioned earlier, it's a one-page essay about why you wish to apply to that university. We're pretty experienced in this. We know exactly what the schools are looking for in this essay. The format is actually slightly changing this year from an essay to specific questions, but essentially it is a personal statement just broken down into questions. You'll also need one reference letter from the school. So this could be, ideally it would be from a similar subject to the subject the student is applying for. And it's just a one-page essay explaining your relationship with the student and obviously talking about their academic and personal skills. Predicted grades forms. Now, this is something we always have issues with every year because a lot of schools in the UK, the schools, high schools are very used to giving out these predicted grades for their students, which means that, you know, we've looked at what the student performed in grade 11, and for grade 12 they will need to kind of estimate what they think this student is capable of achieving. So we have a form that we can send to you if you need, which is a predicted grade form. So it says, okay, student X in grade 12 achieved an average of 85. We believe in grade 12 they will achieve 87, for example. Or you can just put what they achieved in grade 11. Yeah. Okay. Now so I think the reason why sometimes this seems like a bigger deal than it is, I think the university in the UK just wants a rough idea of whether this student is capable of getting into the university. And there is no, you know, they're not held to these grades. They're just going to make a conditional offer based on this. So, for example, if your student is applying for medicine without a predicted grades form, they will not receive an offer. Their application will simply be rejected. So for certain subjects, for certain universities, it's really important that if there is a predicted grade required, that you supply these. And, you know, they don't need to be 100% accurate, but they need to be completed. But we can help you with that process should you have any resistance from some school boards have just refused to give them, and therefore some of our students have not been able to apply to some of these universities. Passports, some schools will require a passport copy, but not until the later stages of the application. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some, you know, as I said, we help about 1,000 students apply to the UK every year, and I thought by telling you some of the subjects that we are applying to for our students, it may help you guide some of your students to selecting courses in the UK that will be beneficial to them to come back to Canada. So one of the largest subjects we see interest for is the Bachelor of Law. So the Bachelor of Law in the UK is a 3-year program that students can enter outside of high school. Now that means they go to the UK, they study law straight away without an undergraduate degree, and 3 years later they return to Canada and they go through a series of examinations called the NCA exams. They article in Canada and then they can sit the bar in Canada. So, you know, a lot of students take this option. It saves going to university in Canada, studying for 4 years, and then doing another 2-year and maybe not getting in because of the LSAT. So if people do have, you know, decent grade. So to get into law school in the UK, you only need a minimum of 70%. So what we find is a lot of students will do very well at high school and maybe not do so well at university and can't get into Canadian universities with their GPA from university. So we even have students that are at university currently in Canada, and they can do what's called the 2-year LLB. So they can go to the UK with an undergraduate degree and do 2 years. And again, they need 70% for that. So I think a lot of Canadian students see this as a popular route. I think there's around 500 students that go to the UK every year to study law from Canada. And some universities are really set up for this. There are certain universities that offer Canadian law modules, like Canadian constitutional law, Canadian tort law, and what they will do is they will prepare students to come back to sit those NCA exams so that they can really get on their way to sitting the bar in Canada. So we're big proponents of this program, and there's no exam needed. Some universities require one exam, but that's only about 3 or 4 out of 100. So there's 100 law schools to choose from in the UK. So lots and lots of options for law, and the fees are, you know, they're not cheap, but they're not astronomical by any stretch. So I think I've got that behind my, yeah. So they're $18,000. Yeah, I mean, yeah. They range from $18,000, I would say, up to about $25,000 per year for the 3 years. There are scholarships available. A lot of British universities want Canadian students on their programs for diversity of the student body, and they will offer. It's very common to see like £3,000 scholarships, which is about 5,000 Canadian, off of their first year at least, and possibly on their second year. So I think a really good offering there for law school in the UK. Okay, so medicine. Medicine, again, is probably the second most popular subject we see interest from Canadian students. It's a 5 or 6 year program, and again, it's possible to enter directly from high school. The entry requirements are 85%, which is the minimum, and they need to have at least 85% in biology and at least 2 sciences. So again, entry requirements are not too high, I would say, compared to what it would take to go through an undergraduate degree in Canada and then get into medicine in Canada. We find a lot of students, again, at university. They've studied 4 years. You need a 3.2 GPA to get into medicine from university. So again, you know, there's a bit of a risk. So if students want to study medicine and at high school and they've got good grades in science, you know, we do recommend that they look at this as an option. For medicine in the UK, as I mentioned earlier, the deadline is October the 15th. So students that are planning on applying for medicine should start really applying in the next few months, or start preparing, sorry, in the next few months. And they need to sit an exam called UCAT. It's like MCAT, so it's very similar in testing their verbal reasoning skills and situational judgment and things like that. So this test is something they really need to ace in order to get a place at a university, at a good university. So once students have the UCAT, they will also need 2 weeks work experience in a healthcare setting, whether that's giving directions to someone at a hospital, or whether that is shadowing a doctor in a doctor's office, or whether that's working in a care home. They need to have at least 2 weeks experience, and universities are not asking for any more. I think they just want to see evidence that they've worked with patients and they have the communication skills required for medicine. So their personal statement needs to include examples of having direct contact with patients. So that's what they're looking for, and that's why they need the work experience. So again, no bachelor's degree required. So it's certainly a good option. It's quite complex decision for a parent and a student to make to go to the UK, because coming back to Canada, they will be considered what's called an IMG, which is an international medicine graduate. And IMGs are, they have residency options here in Canada, but they need to understand that there are limited residency spots for IMGs as well. So for example, if they want to be a family doctor, there are lots and lots of spots for IMGs. Whereas if they want to be a pediatrician, maybe there's 5 per year. But we actually work with a IMG specialist here at SIUK. So we prepare students for that process, usually in their 2nd or 3rd year of their medicine degree in the UK, so that they have a smooth return to Canada. If they don't get matched in Canada for their residency program, they can go to the UK and they can go to the US. So there are other options for them. But things seem to be moving in a more positive direction based on, you know, the demand for physicians here in Canada at the moment. So we're expecting some changes to happen in the near future. We actually have another webinar on that if anybody is interested. I think it's at the end of July, but we'll send you more information on that. Okay, so applying to Oxford and Cambridge, obviously, you know, if you have high caliber students, we seem to find a lot of students interested in like computer science at some of these universities, classics, real mixed medicine, even applying to these schools. As I said, there is an earlier deadline of the 15th of October. These universities include UCL, Imperial, and London School of Economics. These are really the top 5 ranked UK universities. Yeah, so for each of these schools, usually there's an entrance test that needs to be taken. So you will need to prepare your students for this. For example, for maths, there'll be a separate test for like in English. So they need to do their own entrance test for Oxford and Cambridge. Oxford and Cambridge are a little different than your standard university. Obviously, they have the collegiate system, which means you are applying to one of the colleges. So you have to select one of the colleges when you're applying to these schools. And if you need any help with that process, then yeah, please let us know. There's also what's called an open application, whereby you don't select a college and they select a college for you. There's no detriment to doing that to the application. So yeah, again, if you have students applying to these schools, please let us know. In terms of entry requirements for students applying to Oxford and Cambridge, they're really, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, they're looking for the cream of the crop. They do prefer IB qualifications from our experience. They do not, Cambridge more so than Oxford. We have seen students get in with like Ontario High School Diploma, for example, but yeah, I think IB qualifications, as long as they're scoring the highest level, are potentially preferred, but it doesn't say that on the website. On the website, it specifies minimum of 85% in the Ontario High School Diploma. And for Oxford and Cambridge, you will need to supply the students with predicted grades. In terms of other subjects that we see potential for, I guess, in the UK with UK universities is health sciences. So, you know, students that may not be qualified for medicine, veterinary medicine is also an option. Students will need experience at a vet or with a range of animals for, again, a little bit longer. Actually, they need about a month to 2 months experience. And we see a lot of interest in physiotherapy as well. So students who study physiotherapy in the UK, it's a 3-year program. They can go straight out of high school too. So we actually see a lot of students that have done undergraduate degrees in kinesiology, and then they have gone to the UK to do like a 2-year MSc in physiotherapy program. So in total, that's 6 years, but they could, if they know that they want to be a physiotherapist at high school, they can go directly out of university, do 3 years in the UK, and return to Canada and practice. That is the same for physiotherapy and the same for occupational therapy. And we also have like some radiology programs as well, where they can come back and become radiologists. Speech and language therapy is another popular course. So a lot of health sciences where students actually qualify in the UK and can come back to Canada and start working almost right away. Okay. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about, how you could work with us. How we tend to work, the majority of the students contact us are just students finding us online or referrals from other friends. But some of the benefits of being on our mailing list or working alongside our organization is that we really are like a hub of information for UK universities. We have webinars every week. Every Thursday we have a webinar from a law school, just because law is so popular in the UK. So if you look at our calendar, you'll see every week we have a different faculty member from the law school at a UK university presenting. So we tend to get, students from across Canada attending these and really starting to learn about the options available to them for law schools in the UK. We have medicine schools presenting throughout the summer every Tuesday, again, helping students prepare them for their application. We also do our own webinars where we help students with the UCAS application, for example, or a variety of UCL, or universities will just do general presentations on themselves. So you will be invited to these webinars and to learn more about the UK. As mentioned before, we have our UK university fairs in September and June. We would love for you to bring your students to these. Our UK university partners are, excited about this. In September and June, they are the main times that the universities from the UK come to the market. I know that they go to, many of your schools if they can, and if you allow them. I know it can be a lot. Sometimes they're all in town at the same time, but other ways of facilitating these introductions is to just bring your students along to our university fairs, and you can meet the university reps there, and you don't have to host them at your schools. So, we'd be really pleased to have you and your students in grade 10, 11, 12 coming along to these fairs. So how it starts, if you want to work with us, we have an inquiry form, or you can take my email address at the end of this presentation and you just drop us an email. I've got a student, Vicki, they want to go to study law school. What do you think? Usually you would attach the transcripts. We would look and really give you some good options. We'd probably set up a phone call. We'd chat to you. We would walk you through the application process on UCAS, and we would review the personal statements, say yay, nay, or we think this should change here. If they needed any interview preparation, we would talk to you about that as well. Like we could give you some sample questions. We would tell you which, some students are very budget conscious about, they've got this amount to spend, which schools are more affordable. I've talked a lot about high ranking universities, but there are also, not run of the mill, but, universities that aren't as high ranked as some of the others. And I think if somebody wants an international experience, or they're not quite sure what they want to do, going to the UK, studying a general business degree, even if they have grades of say 60%, it's still possible. We have students studying, really specific courses like, motorsport engineering. They want to work with Formula One cars, and so there's some really unique programs in the UK, or they want to become a pilot, and there's a pilot school in the UK. So anything you have from any of your students, please feel free to write to me or to my team, or write to any of us, and we will get that process started and support you. We do have a point of contact at each UK university as well. So if you have a student that hasn't heard back from a university, or is borderline, do you think she should apply for this school, or they have some kind of extenuating circumstance, again, write to us. If you say Southampton, I'll give you the name of the person we work with there, and we will contact them on your behalf and get the response probably quicker than you would by just contacting the school, or the student contacting the university's website. We do, because we send so many students to the UK, we have asked our partners to turn around offers quickly for us. So even if you're applying, now, some students can still apply before the end of June into July. Like, there are options for students even for this year. So just let us know if you have any students that may consider the UK. Our acceptance rate is excellent. We help about 50 or 60 students study medicine, apply to medicine every year in the UK, and we have an 85% interview rate. So 85% of our students, we get to the interview stage. So we know when we look at a student's transcripts whether they are able to get into the program. And there's a lot of variables when selecting the schools, because a lot of medicine schools, they don't have a big pool of seats available for international students. So we're very careful about which universities we select based on the number of seats they have for international, based on the number of students they've accepted from us in the past. So it can be quite a complex algorithm, I guess you could say, when you're selecting a UK school, because these considerations need to be taken into account. And like, for example, we've had students that had 95% average, and they've not done well in the UCAT because they haven't prepared. They've applied to Oxford, Cambridge, LSE because they've got high grades, but they've walked away with no offers. And we've had students with like 87% that have really studied for the UCAT, that have selected schools that we've helped them choose, and they've got offers. So I think there's real benefit in using our services in terms of selecting the right schools, not just for medicine but for other schools as well. Okay, so once the student's applied, we also help with accommodation. Sometimes they don't want to live on campus, sometimes they want to live in private accommodation. We have lots of options available for students and help them with that. If they need insurance, we have insurance companies we recommend. We give all of the students that we work with a free phone card credit for when they go to the UK. We have pre-departure events running at our Toronto and Vancouver offices throughout the summer. So, students can meet other students going to the UK and network before they leave. We also have priority visa appointments with the VFS, which is the visa body where you have to apply for your visa to go to the UK. And yes, we have, if somebody can't get a visa appointment and they're desperate, they can contact us. We can get them either the next day or next couple of days appointment. So we do have a good relationship with the VFS in Canada too. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to leave you with some contact information. these are the main email addresses. We're going to send a presentation anyway. We do have an Instagram account that you can follow that has information about our upcoming events, has testimonials from our students, has life information about life in the UK. So if you have any students that are thinking of going to the UK, please feel free to pass this on. If you'd like to register for our UK University Fair, we will send a link in the follow-up email that you'll get after this presentation. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. You can either turn on your mic or type in the, honestly, pick up the phone. We're here. That's what we're here for.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.